welcome to today's webinar, Building a Productive and Efficient Contact Centre. I'm Rachel and I'm going to be your webinar chairperson today. Delighted to welcome a brilliant panel of expert speakers to our webinar today. Welcome back, Daniel Lord from OmniTouch International. Welcome, Daniel.
Thank you, Rachel. Lovely to be here.
And for people who missed your lovely introduction at the beginning, would you like to say hello again?
Absolutely. For the last 21 years, I founded my company 21 years ago. We've had a chance to teach customer experience, customer service, and contact center management all around the world. So it's really a pleasure.
Well, thank you for joining us. And also delighted to welcome back Sarah Morgan from Luceat Consulting. Welcome back, Sarah.
Thanks, Rachel. Great to be back. As I say, I love these webinars. I love the conversations.
And for people who have missed your introduction as well, would you like to share a bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I set up Luceat Consulting and Luceat Coaching now 2 years ago after 25 years running technology operations and customer operations, so internal service desks and external contact centres. And the purpose of my businesses is to unlock potential and performance both in individuals and in businesses through leadership development and also through looking at process and technology, but with the employee at the heart of it rather than doing the technology to them.
Brilliant. Well, welcome and thank you so much for that. And last but not least, welcome Brian Atkinson from 59 EMEA. Welcome, Brian.
Thanks, Rachel. Good to be back. It's been a few years since I've spoke with this team, and been at 59 now for 2 years, but been in the industry in the UK for 14 of those years, and really got a passion about 7 or 8 years ago, when the kind of whole customer experience boom kicked off and people were getting certified and becoming customer experience certified professionals. And I was really passionate in leading that charge. So really looking forward today to kind of sharing more about, what we see as a manufacturer in the industry, what customer trends are taking place. And yeah, just really excited to be a part of today's session.
Brilliant. Well, we're looking forward to hearing your presentation a bit later. So before we begin, just a few housekeeping bits. A reminder that we're taking a recording of today's webinar. So if you've missed anything or want to share it with your team, that will be available later on this afternoon on callcenterhelper.com/recorded-webinars. So to today's webinar, we are having our usual discussion in the chat room. Lots of people already joined. About 40 people, so only about a third of the participants already in the chat room. You can log in using cch.chat. It's just a little short link. You need to add in your first name and your email address that will take you through. It is in a separate window, but hopefully with people's wide screens, they can put them either side by side, or you can have the chat room on your mobile phone. Lots of reasons to be in the chat room. You can download a copy of all our speakers' slides. That's available on this button up here, and you will be able to join in our quiz, which is happening a little bit later on. Prize for winning the the winner of the quiz using these buttons. Another reason to be in our chat room is that we are running our usual champagne, box of chocolates, or Amazon gift card for the best tip. So if you want to ask our panel a question, just write #question. And if you want to share your top tips for productivity and efficiency, you just use #tip before yours. So before we get into today's webinar, I want to share a quick warm-up poll. So I'm going to launch that one now. And the question is, how do you measure agent productivity? It is multiple choice, so you can pick more than one answer. So the answers are number of calls, / chats handled, average handling time, occupancy, adherence to schedule, quality scores, or first contact resolution. Daniel, I'm going to come to you, put you on the spot. What do you think is going to come out if you're a betting person?
Okay, if I'm a betting person, I think you're going to see number of calls, and I think you're going to see average handling time primarily.
Brian, you're agreeing, and any other changes to that?
No changes from my side. I think the way I look at it is, what have we looked at from a historical perspective, or maybe how are we looking at it from a new world perspective? What's 2022 look like? But yeah, I think betting man, I agree with Daniel there.
Right. Well, I think you can see some of my screens. So yeah, coming out on top, 75% number of calls, chats handled, 63% then average handling time, 57% then quality scores, 31% first contact resolution, 28% adherence to schedule, and 22% occupancy. I mean, Daniel, I'm guessing this isn't a surprise from your point of view.
No, but I'm going to ask on behalf of Brian and I, does that mean we won a box of chocolates? Because Brian, I think we held the crystal ball and did pretty well. So yeah, just kidding, Rachel. Just kidding. Yeah.
Fab. Well, I think this is a perfect chance for me to hand over the baton to you, Daniel, to take us through your slides. So
no problem. So
stop sharing.
I will stop the sharing and bring up a presentation here. There we go.
Yeah.
All righty, we're good. And thanks again for having me. So let's get to work, because we've got about 10 minutes or so. All right, here's the harsh reality of customer service in the contact center industry. Customer service interactions tend to drive disloyalty, not loyalty. And if you've read this great book, The Effortless Experience, you learn that any customer interaction is 4 times more likely to drive disloyalty than to drive loyalty. And for the context of this discussion, and also in the book, disloyalty refers to negative word of mouth. So the customer has a negative experience and they share that negative word of mouth with others, often to evoke some sympathy. So let me phrase this another way. We tend to do more harm than good. All right, we tend to do more harm than good. Now, there are a number of ways that we do harm in the contact center. But the research shows that this is the biggest one. The biggest driver of customer disloyalty is when a customer needs to contact the organization more than once to resolve an issue. So I think before we even get into what is productivity or get into what is efficiency, we have to set the stage with this understanding. We do more harm than good. And the biggest way this harm presents itself is when customers have to contact us multiple times to get their job done, to get something done. So not a great picture. Now, when I teach contact center management, I teach this concept of looking at things through what I call CEO. And when I'm talking about CEO, I'm not talking about the job title or the head of the company. I'm talking about the stakeholders that I serve. So a C stands for customers. I serve my customers. E stands for employees. I serve my employees, like you heard Sarah talking about. O, I serve my organization. There are certain things I need to deliver for my organization. So when I'm running a contact center, I have to be aware how my decisions are going to impact the CEO. Let's take a moment to look at the impacts here of these repeat contacts. It's not a great picture. Here we go. Disloyalty goes up. Customer sat goes down. Cost to handle the additional interactions go up. Service level ends up going down. Agent occupancy goes up. By the way, I can go up and down for days. Sometimes I call this the chicken dance. The point here is that this is clearly a bad picture. This is not good. We don't want to be here. We don't want to be living here. Unfortunately, some centers actually then take this difficult situation that I've described and they make it worse. And how do they make this worse? Well, they look at individual agent productivity the wrong way. And what I'm showing you on the screen, and Brian, here we go, 3 classic things that I still see after 20 years of teaching contact center operations that are out there in terms of agent productivity. By the way, these are all wrong. And let me just run through them very quickly. Measuring agents or targeting agents on the number of contacts handled in service level environments. A service level environment refers primarily to things like calls and live chats. That is incorrect. It is incorrect to target that figure. Now, when I say incorrect or wrong, I'm not talking about morally wrong. I'm not getting moral here. That's a different discussion. I'm simply talking about operations 101, basic math, basic understanding of operations. So that's wrong. Average handling time is a big component of agent productivity. Big meaning that there's a sense in the company that the agents have significant control over all the drivers of AHT. But when you really study AHT, agents do not have significant control. They have some control, it's more minor. So when we look at agent performance scorecards, because you brought up scorecards earlier, Rachel, we sometimes see that the AHT is way overweighted, which is going to drive some not so great behaviors. The third one, occupancy rate, makes no sense to target at the agent level. Occupancy rate is the outcome of other factors, primarily agent group size and service level performance. It can be useful to do budgeting and planning, but it's not an agent productivity measure. So let me recap here. In customer service, we tend to do more harm than good. The biggest harm we do is cause the customer to contact us multiple times to solve their issue. And some contact centers say these are the measures of productivity we want from our contact center agents. So when you put all that together, I think you can see what kind of a mess this is and why so many centers are struggling. Now, what I want to show you here is what I call the productivity and quality matrix. And we have a lot of clients that use the productivity and quality matrix once they understand it. Here's something fundamental we all need to know and understand. Productivity and quality are not at odds with each other. They're not at odds with each other. We need both to succeed. And your agent measurement and development systems need to allow agents to deliver productivity and quality without compromising either one. That's the key. So let me just briefly explain what you're looking at here and how this would work. Every one of these colored bubbles represents an agent. So here's a team. At the end of every month, I give my agent a productivity score. And I plot that productivity on the vertical axis. So low productivity is down here, higher productivity for the month is up here. I also give my agent a quality score. I think productivity and quality are separate. You want to measure them separately. So I give my agent a quality score, which is measured on the horizontal axis. Low quality on the left, high quality on the right. Now, what is the job of a team leader? And frankly, what is the job of contact center management? To take all these colored bubbles and day after day, week after week, month after month, move people into higher levels of productivity and quality. That's when you start to see some amazing things happen in your center. But here's a key. You have to pick the right metrics. Let me just give a quick example. If in your productivity score, you tell agents they need to handle a certain number of calls, I guarantee you that's going to battle or fight against quality. And anytime you set metrics that battle or fight each other, that's the sign of a poor performance management system. So that's one of the things, in addition to the kinds of things I think you'll hear from Sarah, that you need to consider. Agents can deliver both productivity and quality, but you have to set the right metrics. And again, I'm not doing this from a moral standpoint, I'm doing it purely from operations standpoint. Can you do something with me? Can you just imagine something? What if quality was the new productivity? Now, I don't mean to sound all guru-y, like I'm floating around on a cloud or a cave somewhere, but I want to say it again because I like saying it. What if quality was the new productivity? Now, I don't mean this literally. I don't mean let's go throw away all the productivity standards. I think productivity and efficiency have their place. They have to be just the right ones is all. But I look at this statement as, what if I said this in my company? And what if we took quality as seriously as we do productivity? What if we invested as much effort and time in quality as we do in productivity, and not just lip service? There's plenty of lip service out there. I'm talking about actually making effort, discipline, and sophistication in quality, because quality is intense. There's a lot to it. And if you're in CX, you know that coming up with a customer experience vision or a service delivery vision or these kinds of things, a lot of effort goes into it. I think if you looked at quality this way, the picture is going to be a little bit different. And I want to show you this picture. Your CEO is going to be entirely different. We go in, we re-engineer quality. We take out the harm I talked about at the beginning, because there's harm that we do. So when we redesign quality, we redesign it so the harm gets taken out. When we do that, quality goes up. And guess what then? Repeat contacts go down. Customer sat goes up, costs go down, service levels go back up, agent occupancy goes back down, engagement goes up. And here we are with my chicken dance, because contact centers are highly interrelated ecosystems. When you make a decision in one part, it has a ripple effect through all the other parts. I think you can see this is a much better place to be than the place we looked at earlier. I did want to say this: productivity and efficiency is a huge topic. It's what I call a multi-pronged topic, meaning there are many different parts within the contact center ecosystem that you can look at efficiency and productivity, in addition to what I just spoke about. What I'm showing you on this slide or in this picture are 3 ways that we're seeing people focus in on productivity and efficiency over and above what I already spoke about. The first one is workforce management people, we love you. Better forecasting, because when you match labor to demand, that's the ultimate cost efficiency. Anyone that does the financial calculations is going to say this is where real cost efficiency comes from. The second one, I think, Rachel, you asked me at the beginning of the webinar, we have a lot of clients who have realized this. The key job of a contact center agent is to have great conversations with customers. Once you learn how to have a great conversation on live chat, it's frankly not that different than a telephone call, not that different than an email, not that different than other channels. I admit there are nuances between them. We teach all the channels. But once you teach agents that, hey, it's about having a great conversation, and if you can say it, you can write it. And if you can write it, you can say it. It's actually not that hard to get people to be cross-trained across channels. And then the third and last point I have is this whole rise of CX, which I heard Brian mention a couple of times. For me, that involves a unification of purpose across the organization. And what I mean by purpose is a renewed focus on the C. My CEO, we're back to remembering who the C is. And when you have multiple departments tackling problems together, you're able to get at those problems at the root, which frankly means you get rid of them in the first place. So these are just additional points because this is a huge topic. I want to close out by saying thank you for letting me share here. And I want to share a quote that's really struck me over the past few months when I stumbled across it from Maya Angelou. Do the best you can until you know better, but then when you know better, do better. And I think that's true of so many of us working in contact centers, customer experience, and customer service. We end up so often in the industry by accident. So we have to learn. And as we learn, we have to be willing to make changes and do things. So Rachel, thanks very much for letting me ramble on and on. I am officially done. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Brilliant. Brilliant topic. Thank you so much. If you wanted to share in the chat room, what did you like best about Daniel's presentation? That would be great. My key takeaways was, any customer interaction is 4 times more likely to drive disloyalty than drive loyalty, which is a huge shock. Don't make it worse by looking at agent productivity the wrong way. And, what if quality is the new productivity? A really insightful presentation. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Rachel.
So over in the chat room, lots of top tips and questions coming through. So I'm going to fire through some of these. So Rowena said, our focus as always has been quality first and quantity will follow with time and confidence. Daniel, great one to start with.
Yeah, I mean, I put it this way. I agree with you. Your quantity flows from quality first. So I have nothing to add here, Rohina, other than, yeah, I think we're kindred souls in this. So.
Brilliant. So Phil has said, occupancy is an organizational measure. I use it as a measure of how well we serve our staff, keeping the role meaningful and fulfilling rather than stressful and driving poor behavior. Sarah, I know this is, organization-wise, very big topic for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And showing that people have got the tools and the processes to do their job, but also they've got the space and the time to do it appropriately, rather than being absolutely under pressure to get that customer off the phone and onto the next call, because they can see call waits rising and there aren't enough people within the contact center. So I love that. Thank you, Phil.
Yeah, and Daniel, you were thrilled with that one as well.
Well, yeah, but I mean, whoever wrote this, Phil, 100% right. Occupancy is a very senior level metric used at an organizational level to help you know how much your resources are getting used and to do financial planning. But part of that E, which I know is Sarah's kind of area of focus, that E for employee, is I need to know the occupancy rate my agents are going through, because that occupancy rate is proven to have a direct impact on their motivation, their stress levels, and so forth. So we have to have an eye on that number and know what it is. So not just how long do customers wait, but what kind of occupancy rates are my agents going through. You need to know both sides. So
yeah. So we've had a question in from Brandon who said, currently we're lacking in workforce management. Where do you suggest to start when moving into workforce management tools? Brian, I don't know if you have any thoughts on this one.
Yeah, it's a good question, because you start off in sometimes smaller contact centers and not having any ability to track. I think for me, it is around looking at going back to kind of the productivity metrics and understanding how are those productivity metrics are linking back into to the outcomes that you're trying to achieve. And I think once you start to realize, hey, I've got some really good productivity metrics that are taking place, then we can start to look to say, okay, how could we, do we need to improve in areas? Is the business growing, for example, and we need to be able to, we're looking to add additional agents. Could we actually, be smarter with, with the productivity that we have of the current agents to be able to fulfill the needs of the business? So I think it's, kind of understanding where the business is at, the needs of the business. Do you need to add more capacity? But also, I think it's a great tie-in into Daniel's presentation on making sure that you're not adding agents for the sake of adding agents when your productivity metrics are already poor, right? So it's really balancing that out.
Oh, thank you. So we've had a tip in from Joshua who said, true first contact is an interesting philosophy / metric too. Was the call really the first contact? Did the customer first try to solve the problem in their online account or app? Is the call really the third contact? Yeah, I mean, Brian, I know you're going into self-service and everything later. I think it's important to know all of this.
Yeah, as we talked about, kind of prior to the webinar officially starting, in the 10 minutes running up to the webinar, leveraging data is really critical, and leveraging data across channels is even more important. It's so easy to do in this day and age. And I guess this is where you get to that, where you can get to a point where you can understand, was that contact, that person already on our website? Was that person already reaching out to us via digital or SMS? And it's really easy for the systems to automate, hey, this person has already contacted us, and just, tick a flag in a database. And then the next time you have that, that customer come in, you ID them, you can realize that has already taken place. So linkages between channels with data, so easy to do these days. And it's a very simple, next step to be able to solve this type of challenge.
Yeah, and Sarah, you're without giving too much away, going into a lot more of this first contact and everything. Yeah, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, absolutely. And Joshua's point is spot on. By the time the customer is speaking to an individual in a contact center, it's already problematic. That first contact, when it's spoken with an advisor, or perhaps on live chat with an advisor, but with a real person, absolutely critical to get it right, and to spend that extra little bit of time getting it right then, instead of being ultimately focused on getting that customer off the phone.
Brilliant, thank you. So Phil's also shared, contact centers which succeed are focused on reporting forwards, not historically. Good forecasting is with 10 times good historic reporting. So Wendy's asked, how do you measure quality? Daniel, you've brought up quality, so I'm going to come to you.
absolutely. I mean, you typically see two common sources for quality. The first source is the internal source, which is typically your QA function, your service quality function. They do what I call pluck some calls, pluck the chats, and measure those against the predefined standards. Of course, the standards have to be well designed and selected, but that's a different question. There is another source, which is to use the actual external voice of the customer. So we did have a client in the tech company. They first set their global standards purely on internal, but they found their internal scores were very high, but their VOC results were low. So then they switched their whole model to external VOC. But they created a different problem when they did that. Now all the agents were scored on what customers said about them. So the agents gave the customer whatever they wanted. They gave away the store, basically. So then this client, they were very clever. We won't name them. They're a big one. They said, you know, maybe we'll go 50-50. Now I'm not saying go 50-50, but I'm just describing the mentality that we're seeing companies go through. But the two key sources that we typically see are scoring on that internal monitoring form, which is important because that captures certain company standards that are important to you, and looking at what customers have to say about that interaction so that you can help improve it as well. So I hope that helps.
Thank you. Actually, Naveen's just typed into the chat room. I'm going to read it straight out. Quality is meeting customer expectations, not deviating from what is expected, which is a very interesting one. So as you can see, lots of things coming through, but I think great to hand over the baton to Sarah Morgan. So I'm going to stop sharing and let you take us through your presentation. Oh, you're on mute at the moment. Oh no, we still can't hear you.
Oh,
there you go. Bit of a delay. Yes, I can.
Yeah, thanks for that, Rachel. So I'm going to talk about what is a productive and an effective contact centre. Is that working or is it just delayed? It's suddenly going to fly through 4 slides. Sorry.
Do you want to stop sharing and restart it?
Yeah, there we go.
There we go. Perfect.
So I'm going to talk about outcomes. And we spoke about it a little bit earlier. What are the outcomes for the customer? What are the outcomes for the organisation, rather than being right down in the weeds? I'm going to talk a bit about the difference between an efficient contact centre and an effective contact centre. They're sometimes used interchangeably, but they're not quite the same thing. And talk about first time fix versus average handling time, which has been a theme up until now anyway. And then really look at getting proactive and what that can mean for the productivity and the effectiveness of a contact centre. So what are the outcomes that we're trying to achieve? We want to delight our customers. We want to resolve their problem. As we said, perhaps this is, excuse me, the contact from the customer is really their 3rd or their 4th attempt to resolve the problem that they're facing. So by this point, they want minimal or no follow-up contact. You know, they're kind of done. They want it to be effortless and straightforward. And from an organizational point of view, we want to have delighted customers. We want to have our resources being used in a really effective way, but also we want happy and productive employees. I'm obviously passionate about employee engagement, but interestingly, companies with really strongly engaged employees outperform their competitors by 147%, obviously on average. So focusing on that employee engagement and employee satisfaction is fundamentally going to improve your profitability and productivity as an organization. So taking a step back from the detail, getting out of the weeds, as I said, and being able to think about what are the outcomes that we're trying to achieve can help work through the steps that should be taken to drive productivity and effectiveness within the contact centre. So efficient or effective, this is a long debate that I've had in a number of organisations, with a lot of contact centres having a real passion for and focus on efficiency. My worry with efficiency is what can happen is you end up doing the wrong thing faster, whereas being effective is about thinking about those outcomes, thinking about the desired result and doing the right thing, but also doing the thing right. So really thinking about those outcomes and not just working out how to do it more quickly, but really how do you get to that desired outcome and your success criteria. at the right point in time. Daniel talked about the issue when a customer has to contact, and the fact that the reputation and the relationship's always somewhat damaged by that point. However, only 1% of customers will churn if their problem is resolved the first time they speak to a person, whereas 15% of them are likely to churn if their issue's not addressed sufficiently at that point. And when you align that to the fact that customers that increase retention by only 5% can increase their profits by between 25 and 95%, it's quite clear that even if you're only looking at the bottom line and the profitability of an organization, having that focus on first contact resolution is really going to have a significant impact on the bottom line and the profitability of your organization. So the customers had an issue, and I talked about balancing those KPIs. So many organizations have average handling time, call wait time, number of calls handled as the primary drivers of productivity and primary measures, and therefore drivers of behavior for advisors. So thinking about that broader context of getting it right first time, so balancing your KPIs to make sure that that call time isn't king. Incentivizing your staff to go the extra mile on the phone to minimize follow-up. If you have, 40 seconds, say, that's going through identification and verification, you've got a minute to get to the bottom of why the customer's calling in for a second time. You've got some time to resolve and then wrap time. Instead of spending 5 minutes on that second call, spending 3 minutes on the first call, already you're making productivity gains. And it feels counterintuitive if you're too down in the detail. But for me, I've had a lot of discussions with senior management and CEOs in organizations where I've encouraged them to increase average handling time, because actually the customer outcomes and the overall productivity of the contact center significantly improves at that point, at which point you've got higher customer satisfaction, you've got brand loyalty and reduced churn, which leads to higher profits, as we said earlier as well. So prevention is where I think the magic happens, and this takes some proactivity, taking time to look at the trends. Why are people calling? Are there things that can be done from a self-serve point of view that would mean that they can self-serve and resolve their issue prior to having to speak to somebody? But actually, could you take it a step further? Are there preventative steps that you can take by having recognized a trend, so you can do something that means that those customers aren't ever impacted by that issue, or that there is a resolution sent to them before they recognize the impact of that issue? So really taking a step back and taking some lessons from the technology world as well. So having retrospectives, what's gone well, what's gone badly. If we rolled out a new product or an update to a product, has that driven contact? Are there things that we can learn and things that we can change? Or are there new issues that are coming to light that, again, we can take some preventative or proactive steps to resolve? So when I look at KPIs and about a balanced scorecard, I absolutely want to see some of those proactive, how many proactive steps have been taken, how many tickets have been raised into the technology teams even to resolve problems that are being evidenced for customers. What are all of the things that we can do to just think about preventing that contact ever having to land on an advisor's desk in the first instance? Talking about all of this in 10 minutes is obviously tricky, but what you can change quite easily is change that focus from efficiency to effectiveness. What are the outcomes? What are the bigger picture metrics rather than the individual KPIs? And at the beginning, I talked, before we started the presentations, I talked a little bit about watermelon metrics. And that's something to be really cognizant of. it can be quite easy within the team to look at your metrics and your KPIs and ensure that they're green, to make sure that it looks good. But when you dig underneath, you can see that actually there's a lot of red there and there are a lot of issues for customers. So if you're only measuring average handling time, or you're only measuring call wait time, it's very easy to manage those metrics and to produce a green report. But are you really meeting the customer's needs and the customer's outcomes? No. So it's what I would call a watermelon metric at that point. So think about those metrics. Balance your KPIs to drive up that first contact resolution, first time fix, and make time to really think about the proactive and the preventative steps that you can take to resolve customers' issues before they ever become aware of them. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that, Sarah. I'm going to stop sharing. So we are coming now to our quiz. You need to be logged into our chat room. I think we've got about half the audience not already logged in. So if you wanted to, it's callcenterhelper.com/chat, or we have just a short-term cch.chat. Maybe once you've logged in, you can say in 1 or 2 words, what did you like best about Sarah's presentation? Sarah, brilliant presentation. You know, my key takeaways were, you know, if you have happy employees, you will outperform your competitors by on average 147%. I know that Phil had said 147% is a staggering figure, you know, quite a shock on that. Efficiency or effective, they're not the same. So, you know, make sure you know which one is which. And, you know, I love a good statistic. So 1% of customers go to your competitors when there's not a first time fix, whereas 15% will go if the issue is not resolved after that first time. So yeah, thank you so much for that. So yes, to come over to our quiz, to take part, the buttons are in the bottom left-hand corner. So A, B, C, or D. So, you know, you click the button that applies to the right answer, or hopefully the right answer. So I'm going to head over to our quiz dashboard. So I can see, yep, got a few more. Last chance to take part. So I'm going to actually move the panel because it's going to cover what the question is. Right. So first question, according to a Harvard report, how much more productive were staff when they moved from the office to work from home, measured in calls per hour? Was it A, 0.75%, B, 7.5%, C, 12.5%, or D, 17.5%? So you just need to click the button associated in the chat room. That's according to a Harvard report, how much more productive were staff when they moved from the office to work from home? Was it A, 0.75%, B, 7.5%, C, 12.5%, or D, 17.5%? Last chance. I'm going to go on, and actually most people, it's one of the top answers. It was actually 7.5%. In the article, it showed that when contact center workers went from working in the office to working at home, their number of calls that they made per hour increased by 7.5%. So Abby's currently in the lead. So second question, which country has the most productive workers in the world when measured by GDP? Is it A, Belgium, B, Ireland, C, UK, or D, USA? Which country has the most productive workers in the world when measured by GDP? Is it A, Belgium, B, Ireland, C, the UK, or D, the USA? Last chance to vote. Actually, most people saying Belgium, but it's actually Ireland. This article from the Irish Times shows that Ireland as the most productive country in the world. The UK came after the USA, France, and Germany. All change at the top. So third question, when is the best time to call a contact center to get your issue resolved? Is it A, as soon as it opens, B, mid-morning, C, lunchtime, or D, just before it closes? When is the best time to call a contact center to get your issue resolved? A, as soon as it opens, B, mid-morning, C, lunchtime, or D, just before it closes? Most people getting this one wrong. The correct answer is actually A, as soon as it opens. The Citizens Advice Bureau in Monmouth advises that if you're having difficulty getting through to a contact centre, to phone first thing in the morning. All change again. So final question, last chance to win a prize. Who said quality means doing it right when no one is looking? Is it A, Sheryl Sandberg, B, Thomas Edison, C, Meg Whitman, or D, Henry Ford? So that's who said quality means doing it right when no one is looking. So A, Sheryl Sandberg, B, Thomas Edison, C, Meg Whitman, or D, Henry Ford? And last chance. Yeah, most people getting that one right. The correct answer is D, Henry Ford. Another quote by him is, "Nothing is particularly hard if you divide it into small jobs." So the winner of our quiz is actually Rach1. I promise it's not me. I've been reading the answers, so we will be in touch after the webinar to sort out your prize. So I am going to head back to this and hand over to our final presentation to Brian. So I'm going to stop sharing and let you share your presentation, Brian.
Great. Thank you, Rachel. Appreciate that. That should be coming through there now, right?
Yep. And if you want to put it in full screen.
Great. Well, I've really enjoyed not only the discussion at the beginning, but also just hearing from such great thought leaders today. So thank you, Rachel and Daniel. And love the topic of the discussion as well. You know, productivity and efficiency is such a key thing. You know, as we talked about a little earlier, it can really impact, you know, the outcomes of a business. It can impact the happiness of the employees, and ultimately, you know, impact us as humans in our daily lives. And that's typically what I tell people I do when I do for work is, you know, I hopefully make your life a little bit better. And by that, I mean, you know, we're all in this customer service industry, and hopefully we're making the world a better place because we're producing better experiences. And so I guess that's what kind of drives my passion in this space. And if you take a look over the next, you know, few years, I think that there's just tremendous opportunity to transform and drive productivity and drive that efficiency. So with that, just going to spend again a few quick minutes, 9 or so minutes, and we'll kind of walk through kind of how do we do that in this day and age. So I wanted to share some statistics. I think it's always important to see what's taking place not only in the UK but also around the world. And so this first statistic really just came out from Aberdeen Strategy and Research, and there's going to be a link to this research. It's pretty short, 7-8 pages. I found some really compelling metrics here around how AI can benefit the contact center. A lot of things that we're talking about today, right? We talked about first contact resolution a little bit earlier, and how leveraging tools or technologies or best practices around data and some of the technologies, you know, could increase that first contact resolution by nearly 2.3 times. We talked about loyalty at the very beginning, the effortless experiences. Daniel mentioned that, and how could you make things more effortless in this day and age? And I think there's numerous ways that can drive results and increase that kind of customer retention. Obviously, cost used to be a huge driving factor, but it's still top of mind for many organizations. So while it may not be the key number one metric we're looking to do is reduce costs, we're more focused on CX in this day and age. But that is a side benefit where you can start to say, okay, well, how could we repurpose those costs to invest in our people, or to invest better incentive programs for them, or invest in newer technology over here. And so I think some of this research really was eye-opening to be able to see that we now have some good data on what kind of the best-in-class companies around the world are doing. So I'd really encourage you to take, again, it's 7 or 8 pages, this PDF. It's a really nice, interesting read that gives you some insight behind that data. We also do another customer service index, and this one is of about 3,000 companies from about 8 different countries, including the UK and some in mainland Europe. But what's interesting here is this is just general inquiries or escalated inquiries, and which channel those kind of came in on. And so we're still seeing in this day and age 50% of contacts coming in through the phone. We spent many years, I think if you look back for the next 4 or 5 years, the drive around digital, right? Getting the digital channel, up to speed, and that self-service has been a huge focus, but we're still seeing a lot of drive in that voice space as well. So one of the key areas I think that best-in-class companies are focusing on building productivity, better productivity solutions for the last few years has been around doing it like on a per channel basis. But how can we also then drive across those channels better experiences? And we'll see some interesting insights here in a moment. So the rise of self-service is happening. People are choosing to self-serve, and you can see a couple of interesting metrics from that same survey here, where last year 55% of people that responded are starting to use some of those AI tools to be more efficient and to be more effective. What we're typically seeing though is that those are being leveraged again on a kind of a channel by channel basis. I think another interesting statistic that came out of this is that 70% of interactions a few years out, customers will prefer to use some sort of speech. Whether that's speaking, through a digital channel, or whether it's actually speaking to an agent, speech of self-service interaction is rising. But I want to put a challenge out there. How is the experience in your contact center around voice? And what I mean by that is the person that as soon as they pick up the phone to enter the contact center for voice, what is that experience like? Is it the same experience that you were delivering, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, even 20 years ago, right? Because of that focus on the digital space, right? And making those self-service interactions with chatbots over the last few years a much better experience, and leveraging that AI. Is it a completely different experience when someone goes onto your voice channel? Is the FAQs that they could access a different FAQ database, for example, right? Do you have FAQs for digital and FAQs for voice, right? How inefficient is that experience? Are you still using IVRs? Are you still using menu trees and getting customers frustrated with that whole experience? And what's interesting is that voice is the best way to communicate, hands down. Like we all typically prefer to have a conversation to get things clearly communicated, but yet still in this day and age in the industry, I still uncover many bad voice experiences in the contact center space. So I just challenge the audience to start to think about, is there consistency across your channels? And of your experiences, which one's providing the best experience and which one is providing maybe potentially the worst experience there. And so if we look at really kind of a modern CX environment, really that consistency across channels is really key. So this is, I guess, just a kind of a depiction of how do you provide a consistent service across channels? How do you provide the interlinkages between those channels so that when someone has come in for the first time on chat, as we talked about earlier, around first contact resolution, how do we make sure that the agent, if that does happen to need to get escalated, hopefully it doesn't get escalated, but if it does, how do we make sure that the agent is fully prepared to know, hey, this person's already spent 20 minutes in a chat. These are the queries they've already asked. There's some sentiment analysis going on to say that there's some frustration. What are the previous contacts, so we can provide and leverage that data again across the channels in real time to make sure that the experience is for the customer's experience is met, right? So that they're not frustrated. Again, going back to that effortless experience, repeating why you're contacting, or repeating the last 10 minutes of frustration that you've had with the chatbot, or even worse, not being able to escalate across channels is really, really key. So I think there's a couple of key areas here. The other thing I'd like to point out here is that, the technology has been around for many years to do a lot of these things. You notice things like, intelligent routing to best resource using natural language call steering. You could do that back in the 2000s, maybe even earlier. But the technology to implement those was very challenging and extremely multi-year projects. In this day and age, with the things of like Siri and people being able to really and very accurately speak to an iPhone in your consumer life, that technology exists today in businesses, and people are leveraging that. And so natural language call steering to determine intent, right? And intent, if you've got better intent, you can route better. If you can route better, you can reduce your escalations, and you can reduce your transfers, because you basically are driving a more effortless experience. And so, from that perspective, there's really key areas to look at across the board when you're thinking about how do I design my architecture in this day and age. So you'll get a copy of these slides, or you can download them as Rachel mentioned. So some other detail across providing that modern experience. But really, what I'd like to kind of highlight here is that, one of the key areas is we focused in on AI, maybe in the digital channel, but really in today's world, you can use virtual agents across channels so that they become not just voice virtual agents or just a chatbot in a digital channel, but you could literally leverage them across channels. So a customer can go through a digital experience and also a voice experience with a virtual agent before it ever gets escalated to and hopefully it wouldn't get escalated, but if it did get escalated to an actual voice agents. And these things are just automation, as we talked about earlier, around what tasks can you automate. So I would, one of the areas that we are seeing best-in-class customers really take advantage of is the IVA, or the intelligent virtual agent space. And just a quick case study here with Pizza Hut, how they've been driving some of these metrics around the world to be able to leverage some of the newer technologies in a modern CX environment and drive productivity, and also increase the efficiency and effectiveness. So with that, I'll leave you with one last slide. I think that the key really here is, what do we focus on? Well, we're trying to focus on, driving the ultimate business value for the organization. But to be able to get there, how do you put some of these components together to be more productive and to be more efficient? And I think a slide that literally you could probably spend 20 or 30 minutes diving into and trying to understand how can we drive this. But a real simple message here is that you can leverage virtual agents across your channels, across your entire customer journey, to provide those very productive and efficient and effective journeys. So with that, Rachel, just wanted to pass back to you and say, looking forward to discussing more and seeing what the other questions are coming on the chat.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. I'm just going to share my screen. So if you would like to see a demonstration of some of the Five9 solutions that Brian has mentioned, I'm just going to put up a quick demo poll. If you just share yes. Some great takeaways I took. Companies using AI saw 2.4 times improvement in agent productivity, by improving customer routing, etc. 2.3 times improvement in FCR rate. And, I think, as you mentioned, that screen that said a digital workforce drives productivity and efficiency. There's so much information. I think you need to download a copy of the slides just to see, all the points and everything that were being made. But a great presentation. Thank you very much for that. I'm just gonna, don't know quite what's happening.
Yeah, Rachel, while you're doing that, it's just such an exciting time, having been in the industry and seen it evolve, for the last 14 years. It's just amazing to see where the tools have advanced to be able to produce exactly what we're talking about today, right? Driving productivity, increasing efficiency. So it's exciting times for sure.
Brilliant. Perfect. And so the first tip we've got is from Dennis, who said, a challenge is to determine which calls require more time than another. My call center, certain calls are expected to be short and efficient, internal, others external, needs the agents to take the time. We're considering setting different expectations, handling times to reinforce the distinction for the agents, as they tend to treat everyone with one approach. Sarah, this is kind of going back to what you were saying, that why don't we change average handling time and everything,
Yeah,
but not one size fits all.
absolutely. And if you're able to differentiate and know that certain types of calls are bound to take longer, then ensuring that the customer gets what they need and the advisor doesn't feel pressurized and driven by that metric, and therefore they can focus on what the customer needs, whether that's internal or external, is brilliant. I love that, Dennis.
So I'm gonna take over screen sharing, and second one, having empowered agents who are confident and skilled sufficiently to go an extra mile for and with a customer is a productivity tool. It reduces failure and repeat demand whilst also providing outstanding experiences. Yeah, a great one from Phil. So actually Phil's asked, I've looked at similar matrix with FCR versus quality. However, how do you get senior management who are stuck in their ways to embrace new success measures? Daniel, I don't know if you had any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, the first thing is I look at FCR as a subset of quality. It's not versus quality. So maybe it's just the way the question is written, because versus implies they're at odds. Most of the clients we work with will say, Dan, we look at FCR as one of the subsets of what that we call our overall Q measure. I think the answer I'm going to give you is going to be true whether we're talking contact center, customer service, or customer experience. You have to speak in the language of your bosses, which is numbers. So you have to know what you're talking about, and then you have to take those concepts and convert it into, if we were to improve first contact resolution, here's going to be the business impact. If we're going to improve XYZ, improve quality, we're going to spend time to do quality the way I think we should, then here is the actual impact. And remember to look at CEO. Don't get stuck only on one number. What's going to happen to my C, my customers? What's going to happen to my E? And what's going to happen to my O? Then it's a lot more palatable for your bosses to look at that and say, oh, you know that other department that wants a new system? Cancel that, give it to them. Because remember, resources are scarce and your boss is trying to pick which one's going to have the biggest impact. So that's an interesting question. And I know it's not as easy as maybe we'd all like it to be, but you do learn to speak in the language of the bosses, which ultimately, Brian and Sarah, I'd be curious what you think, but it's got to come back to business impact at some point. So.
Yeah. Brian, I don't know if you'd had any thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, this comes straight out of kind of, CX strategy. I think it starts, it does start at the top. And if you look at, if you look at the top of the organization, and if the, the board or the executive team, if they care about the customers and from that perspective, it's going to be a lot easier, right? So it depends on kind of where the company's at in their journey of, are they a customer-centric organization or not? I fully agree with Daniel that, like, if your boss is measured on old metrics, it's going to be tough, because that your bosses, that's what they're paid on and that's what they're measured on. So I think you have to get to a point where you understand at what point in the chain, of your organization does that break down, and where does it like cross over to driving true business results. So if you can link like what the company cares about and what the board cares about and the CEO cares about to these metrics, or the new metrics that you would like to be driving, that's where you win, right? And you have to get that buy-in across the chain, and it's not a process that takes a week, right? Sometimes it could be a year-long journey to drive that change across an organization. So that's like a few of my thoughts.
Brilliant. So I'm going to whistle through a few of these because we're running out of time. Wendy said, create a self-service portal for customers to easily access to find their own answers from a knowledge base, or be able to create their own incident tickets as needed, all on their own time.
Can I make a comment on that?
Yeah,
I would
sure.
make sure that knowledge base is also across channels, right? Don't have knowledge bases for different channels as well, right? We've seen that so many times. If you can get that knowledge base to be leveraged across digital, voice, consistent experience is really key.
Yeah, thank you. And a final one from Nicole. To increase productivity, we first look at all the items that may take an agent off the phone to complete to ensure that their productivity was measuring all tasks. Then we gave a goal of an average handle time that includes time for conversations with our members. So unfortunately, as you can see, lots have come through. Thank you so much, but we have reached the top of the hour. So I just wanted to ask if you could write in 1 or 2 words, what did you like best about today's webinar? Today's winning tip comes from Wendy, who said, taking an extra minute or two to provide a moment of training or next steps to a customer goes a long way in positively supporting a customer and prevent the callback. So congratulations, Wendy. We will be in touch after the webinar. A reminder that we have a survey. If you could complete that, it's just 4 questions long and helps us improve our webinar series. If you have missed anything, we have taken a recording, so that will be online later on this afternoon on the following link. And we are back next week with a webinar on how to transform CX. But today's webinar, I just wanted to say thank you very much to our 3 brilliant speakers today. Daniel Lord, thank you very much for all your insights.
Thank you, Rachel. It was fun.
Brilliant. And to Sarah Morgan, thank you so much for everything.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Brilliant. And finally, last but not least, Brian Atkinson, delighted to have you, and thank you very much.
Love the time. Looking forward to the next one. Thank you.
Fab, and we will see you all soon. Thank you very much all, and goodbye.